Have you ever seen a baby take their first step? It's an amazing moment. That's what I want to start off with here. I want to tell you a story about one of my 27 kids, 8 actually, as Steve was saying. Little Josephine, when she took her first step, we were on a retreat. Our family was on a retreat with a bunch of students, and we're in a big lodge in the Rocky Mountains, and there was a circle of chairs of students sitting in a circle, and there was one chair in the middle. Little Josephine saw that chair, and she crawled right to that chair, and she pulled herself up, and she had done things like this before. But I wanted to egg her on. I was hoping she would take her first step right there. And so I was over here saying, come on, Josephine, you could do it. Take that first step, honey. And all the students started cheering, Josephine, Josephine. And you could tell she'd let go with one hand, and she'd kind of look over at me, kind of think about it. Then she'd go, maybe not. I don't know about that right now. And you would cheer her on some more, and she'd let go and go, maybe, no, I don't know if I want to leave this chair. But then eventually she did something that she had never done before. She let go with one hand, and then she let go with a second hand. And for the first time in her life, she was standing on her own 2 feet all by herself. And you could tell she was so proud. She is glowing, and this is all, she's all excited, and we're all excited. I'm like, come on, Josephine, you can do it now, come to Daddy. And everyone's cheering, Josephine, Josephine. But then all of a sudden, her knees started to go like this. And that look of excitement quickly turned to horror. And she desperately went backwards to cling on to the security of that chair. But she got her footing again, and eventually she let go with one hand again, and she let go with the second hand now, and she's standing up again on her own 2 feet. But this time, when her legs got all shaky, instead of going backwards to the security of the chair, she fell forward 1, 2, 3, and fell into my arms and took her first 3 steps. And then she crawled right back to that chair, got up, and she said, again? And she fell into my arms, 1, 2, 3, 4, took 4 steps. She came right back and said, again, and we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we played that game for about a half hour that afternoon, and we played that game for several weeks, and eventually, walking became Josephine's primary mode of transportation. But it can be scary to step out, to take a step that you've never taken before, to go out into the unfamiliar zone. And I think that's where many of us find ourselves at different moments in our relationship with Jesus. I know some of you have never been to a Catholic conference like this before. You're hearing all these speakers, there's adoration and confession, and a lot of this may feel kind of new to you. Then there's others that are like, oh, this is old hat. I've been to 3 conferences already. I do all this kind of stuff before. But my prayer for all of you this whole week has been this. Whether you're new to all this or you've done things like this before, my prayer is that the Lord has touched you in some way here in this week. That you've sensed the Lord calling you, inviting you, like the Heavenly Father, taking another step closer into his arms, a step closer into relationship with him. What will you do when you sense that call? Maybe you're sensing that God's calling you to give more to him. Maybe you're sensing God's inviting you to make a change in your life. There's some things that just need to change. They've needed to change for a long time. But now I've got to make that decisive choice. I've got to make that change now. What will you do? Will you go forward, even if you stumble, even if you fall? Will you go forward into the Father's arms? Or will you just go back to what's comfortable, to what's familiar, and stay at the security of your chair? One of the things I'm blessed to do each year, I lead pilgrimages to Rome. I love taking people to Rome, and particularly a church that's obscure. It's not well known. It's called the Church of San Luigi, St. Louis in English. It's right near the Piazza Navona, and I like to take people there because it has a famous painting by the Baroque artist Caravaggio. And it's the call of St. Matthew, that moment when Jesus walked into the tax collector's office and called Matthew and said, Matthew, follow me. Jesus inviting Matthew to follow him as a disciple. Now, I love taking people there, not just to admire this magnificent masterpiece that this painting is, but more for what this tells us about discipleship, about what it really means to follow Jesus. You see, in the painting, you've got on one side of the painting, Jesus walks into the tax collector's office and he's pointing at Matthew. But on the other side of the painting, Matthew's here with all of his tax collector buddies, and it's really dark on this side of the painting, but where Jesus is, there's a window behind him, so there's all this light shining into the room from behind Jesus. The symbolism is clear. It's about Jesus, the light of the world, walking into Matthew's darkness, shining light on Matthew's darkness. But even though he sees darkness, he sees something in Matthew, and he says, "Follow me." But what I love the most about the painting is the expression on Matthew's face. It captures multiple conflicting emotions all at once. On one hand, Matthew's just kind of shocked. He's looking at Jesus going, "Wait, are you kidding me? You want me? I mean, do you know who I am? I'm a tax collector. I'm a Jew that works for the Roman enemy and collects taxes for them. You don't want me? I'm like a traitor to the nation. I'm a sinner, and do you know what I do on the weekends? Are you sure you want me to be a follower of you?" He's just surprised. But what you also see in the painting is, in his look on his face, you can tell he's actually kind of thinking about it. He's considering this possibility. You can tell he's going, "Wow, I wonder, what would my life be like if I actually did make a change and I did follow Jesus? Maybe my life would be better. Maybe I'd be happier." You can tell he's actually kind of thinking about it, but in the same instant, there's a look of horror on his face. He's like, "Whoa, I don't know, that would be a lot. That's overwhelming. I've never done anything like that before. That's pretty scary. I might have to make some changes. I might have to give up this job, give up this office, let go of all this money. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I just want to stay right here at the security of my chair and not leave this table and follow Jesus." I love this painting because it captures that pivotal moment between Matthew the tax collector and Matthew the disciple. What will Matthew do? And what will you do when you find yourself in those Matthew moments where you sense God calling you? You sense that tug on your heart. You sense he's drawing you. He's inspiring you to give more of yourself to him. What will you do in those moments? You know, I think sometimes when we look at the stories like this, you know, these biblical stories of Jesus calling people, he walks by and he says, "Come follow me," and then everyone just drops everything and follows him. Do you ever wonder about those stories? Sometimes I think we get an impression Jesus is kind of like a Jedi master. He just comes and says, "Follow me." And the people go, "Yes, my master," and just gets up and follow. But you know what? I don't think that's what happened here. Matthew knew Jesus. They already knew each other. The Bible's clear that Jesus went around and he had meals with the tax collectors. He was famous for doing that. He surely had many meals with Matthew before this pivotal moment. They got to know each other. They lived in Capernaum, which is not that big of a town, and they would have seen each other. Jesus would have been preaching and healing, and Matthew would have seen all that. Matthew would have been maybe pretty impressed by Jesus. Maybe he was a fan of Jesus. But on that day, Jesus stepped into his life in a powerful way and invited Matthew not just to be a fan, not just to be impressed by Jesus. Jesus doesn't want us just to be a fan. He wants us to be a follower, to follow him. Jesus doesn't want us just to have him be a part of our lives. He wants to be at the very center of our lives. Will we say yes when we answer that call? Now, in our men's sessions today, Dr. Reyes said this. He said, the last thing the world needs right now are more half disciples. Half disciples. There are many people in Jesus' own day that were very impressed by Jesus. They saw these signs and wonders. He's a dynamic speaker and he's a great preacher. They were amazed at his preaching and his wonderful works. Thousands of people were fans, but there were only a few that answered the call and followed Jesus as a disciple. Will you be just part of the crowd, or will you be the ones that follow Jesus? When you go back to your campuses, you go back to your hometowns, will you follow as a disciple? You know, I have to be honest with you, in my own life, I was a half disciple for many years. I was a half disciple. You know, back in my college days, I wouldn't have called it that. I would have said, I'm actually doing pretty well. I mean, I'm doing better than most people. I mean, I believed in God. I went to church every Sunday, and even those holy days of obligation, I was pretty good Catholic. And I didn't get into as much trouble on campus as some other people did. I was doing pretty well. I actually even went to some retreats every once in a while and was a little bit involved in my Newman Center. I mean, I must have been about the 95th percentile at Indiana University. I mean, I felt pretty good about myself. Go Hoosiers. But if I was honest, Jesus was just a part of my life. I would even say, I might say he was an important part of my life. But he wasn't Lord. He wasn't at the center of my life. And I'll never forget the night I went on one of these retreats, and there was a priest that gave this reflection on the Saturday night of this retreat. And it was a story from the Bible I had heard many, many times before, but I never heard it like this until that night. So personal that I find myself in this biblical story. It's the story of the rich young man. I remember the priest saying, oh, here's a guy who's got it all together, apparently. He wants to follow Jesus. He says, what do I need to do? And Jesus says, you have to obey the commandments. And the man says, I'm already doing that. That's pretty impressive, right? How many of us could say, we got all those 10 commandments down, we're nailing those? I mean, this is an impressive guy. He's following the 10 commandments. And then he even says, well, what more can I do? He really wants to do more than that. What a noble man. But then Jesus says, what I want you to do is give up everything and follow me. And at that, the rich young man said, no, I can't do that. You know, Jesus picked up on something, that the man had a lot of desire, a lot of fervor, but he had an attachment. He had something that was holding him back from being all in. And Jesus put his finger on it, and the man walked away with his possessions. He walked away sad. Why is he sad? Because we're made, my friends, my brothers and sisters, we're made for friendship with Christ. We're made not to be half disciples. No, we're made to give everything to Jesus. And when we hold back, we're going to walk away sad in life because we're made not just for comfort. We're made not just for security. We're not made for just what gives us pleasure and what's familiar. No, we're made for greatness. We're made to follow Jesus. And I heard this story, and I remember I was just stunned. And everyone else left the chapel, and I just stayed there. I couldn't leave. And I just thought, that's me. I'm the rich young man. Jesus, I don't want to do that. You know, in my life, I have all these books up here, pretend these are different parts of my life. You know, in my life, I would have said, you know, I give some to Jesus. I give him part of my life. I give him, you know, this part of my life over here. You know, I go to church. You know, I go to church and believe. And I might pray every once in a while or do some, you know, spiritual activities at the Newman Center. I'll give him that part of my life too. And you know what? I'll try to be a good person. I'll try to be a good person and not hurt other people. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. But then Jesus wants this part of my life too? I don't know if I could do that. Or he wants this part of my life? And he wants this part? And that's where I was like, oh no, I don't know if I can do that. But in the end, that night I knew I didn't want to be the rich young man. And I begged Jesus, don't let me go down that road. And I told him, I want to give you everything. And the beauty is when we give Jesus everything, we put everything on the table, it's not as if he's going to take it away. It's just who's in charge of your life? Who is really the Lord of your life? You see, Jesus wants to be Lord of all. If he's not Lord of all of my life, if I'm holding something back, if he's not Lord of all, he's not Lord at all. And if he's really the Son of God who died for me and rose for me, I want to give him everything. And I want to trust him more than I trust myself. Who's the Lord of your life? What do you run after the most? Is it God, really? Is God just a part of your life, or is he the center? Who's the Lord of your life? Is it sports? Is it Netflix? Is it what other people think of you? The impressions you leave, the likes you get, you're having a boyfriend, having a girlfriend, grades, success. What is really at the center of your life? Jesus is calling us to give him everything. I'm going to give you two things that you're going to need as you go back home. As you go back to campus, there are two things you need if you want to live as a disciple, a true follower of Jesus. First of all, you're going to need prayer. the first thing you're gonna need is prayer, to be committed to prayer each day. But one of the big challenges people have is they say, well, I just don't have time to pray. I don't have time to pray. Have you ever heard people say that? I'm just too busy. I don't know how to fit it all in. You know, Pope Francis has a great quote about this. He says, we Christians, we have to take in the deep breath of prayer. I love that image from Pope Francis. The deep breath of prayer. We need prayer. Our souls need prayer like our body needs oxygen. Another spiritual writer put it this way. He said, have you ever heard of a man who died of hunger because he was too busy to eat? You know, we make time for the things that are most essential. Just picture the autopsy on that. Oh, yes, we figured out. Oh, yeah, this man died of starvation because he was just too busy. He had too many papers to write. He had to watch all 7 seasons of his favorite show in 1 week and didn't have any time to take a break, and he died. How sad. No, we make time for the things that are most important. Put it in your schedule. Get a calendar. A missionary was just telling me this. She said she came to Seek one year, loved it, but then went back and did not make a commitment to pray, and the fruits of Seek did not bear out in her life. She came again 2 years ago, and then the difference was a missionary sat down with her and said, how are you gonna live this out when you go back? You wanna pray? Okay, good. When are you gonna pray? Where are you gonna pray? Get it in your calendar, get it in your schedule, make it a priority. Another challenge that keeps us from really following Jesus in prayer is sometimes we feel like, you know, I don't get that much out of prayer. I don't have those feelings. You know, I went to Seek and it was really awesome and it was great, but now I'm just in my own little tiny chapel and I don't have as nice of chapel as Jason Everett does, and I don't really know if I feel that close to Jesus, and you know, so I don't get those insights in prayer, and that's really a thing that could keep us from moving forward in prayer. And I want to encourage you on this one, because sometimes we can get really discouraged. We can think, I'm just not good at prayer. I stink at this. Why should I even bother going? Because it's just too hard. I don't get a lot out of it. I don't think I'm that good at this. Who's putting those thoughts in your head? Are those thoughts coming from God? Those thoughts are coming from the enemy, from the devil, because he hates it when we pray. And he'll use everything to keep us from praying. He'll make you feel like you're too busy, you don't have time, or he'll make you feel discouraged that you're not good at this, that you can't do it well. Prayer is not about feelings, it's about faithfulness. It's about faithfulness. You know, my little daughter, I have a little baby, Eleanor, my little 2-year-old. My little daughter, Eleanor, she's the cutest thing. You've probably seen me chasing her all around here. But when I come home from work, she's all excited. And she's like, she runs the door, she opens the door for me. She's like, Dada home, Dada home. And then she loves me to give her piggyback rides. So she says, back. And that means I'm supposed to get on all fours and I give her the piggyback ride around the house. So when I'm with little Eleanor in those moments, I just like, I just have all these warm feelings. She's just so awesome. But then there's other times, like at 3 in the morning when she's wailing hysterically and I can't get her to stop. I don't have those warm, fuzzy feelings. I have feelings. They're the kind you bring to confession. But I still have to be faithful. I still have to help her. The same is true in a marriage. It's not about just, romantic feelings all the time. I just love being with you. I mean, those feelings are wonderful when they come, but many times it's about just showing up and laying down your life and serving. Love is not about feelings. It's about faithfulness. It's about sacrifice. It's about being there and fulfilling what God wants you to do. Do you love Jesus enough to show up at prayer when it's hard, when you're busy, when it's difficult, when you feel like you don't get anything out of it? Real love is not about feelings. Make sure you're there for prayer. Last thing here, friends. You're gonna need friends. You're gonna need fellowship. Proverbs 27 tells us, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. When you go back, you need friends. You need friends. It's easy to live your Catholic faith when you're surrounded by 17,000 other on-fire people. But when you go back, many of you may not have that back home. You gotta get connected. Curtis gave that great analogy about the burning coals on the opening night. When you're making a barbecue, you put all the charcoals together. You keep them all together and the heat burns off of each other. And what you wanna do is, what you don't wanna do is keep one isolated coal. If I take one coal and put it over here, what's gonna happen to that coal? The heat's gonna die out. It's gonna lose its heat. And that's what's gonna happen to you if you are separated and you're all alone and you're saying, well, I wanna follow Jesus, but you're all alone. It's gonna be really hard. Many times it's not going to work out. You need friends. You've gotta find friends. Are there any runners out there? My wife's a big distance runner. She's pretty committed, but I'll tell you, when she's got a running partner, someone she's gonna run with, she's really consistent and goes really far. I mean, I don't care how early it is in the morning they're gonna meet. I don't care how much rain or how much snow. It doesn't matter. She'll get up and go meet Elizabeth or Callie. She's just gonna do it. But I'll tell you, one day this last year, she went for a run, came back 3 hours later. I was like, honey, what happened? She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Callie and I just got talking and we ended up running 12 miles, sorry. I go, honey, you almost ran a half marathon on accident. Who does that? But you go farther and more consistent when you got a running partner. The same is true with Jesus. If you want to go far in your relationship with Jesus, if you don't want to just stay at the security of chair, but you want to walk with him and go the distance, you need a partner, you need a burning coal, you need iron sharpening your iron. So my friends, I'll close with this here. You've heard many of the speakers quote the great hero of our era, St. John Paul II, who often said, be not afraid. Be not afraid, and that's what I want to leave you with. Be not afraid. Do not be afraid to give Jesus everything. Don't be afraid to leave the security of the chair. Walk with him, trust him. Don't be afraid to give up what you need to give up. Maybe you need to give up that boyfriend. Maybe you need to give up watching that show that you know you shouldn't be watching. Maybe you need to give up that circle of so-called friends that they don't really care about you that much, and they're not gonna build you up in the faith. Maybe you need to give up just going to prayer when it's easy and when it's fun. Maybe you need to give up that thing you're doing on the weekend that you know you shouldn't be doing. Whatever it is, don't hold back. Give Jesus everything. Be not afraid. May God bless you all.